Hello everyone, I'm the Weather Dude. Welcome back, and today we're going to be taking our fifth look at the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season and why some factors have changed that could make this season more active than we originally thought. As always, be sure to like and subscribe and even ring that bell notification to make sure you do not miss out on the latest and best weather content, and we're just going to get right into it here. Starting off, we're going to examine some different parts of the Atlantic basin to kind of examine how the sea surface temperatures are doing. But first, this is the Nino 3-4 region. This is the area in the tropical Pacific that determines our El Nino and La Nina. And you can see after a slight downtrend through like the middle part of May, it's come right back up here. So we are sitting in El Nino territory. And if it holds here for, say, another month or two, an observed El Nino could be officially called. But yeah, we're definitely in that threshold, you could say. The threshold technically is 0.5 above, which is like right here. So we have broken that threshold by quite a lot, by almost 0.2 degrees Celsius. So we are definitely in that El Nino right now. But again, there are other factors pointing, very conflicting factors, some pointing towards a less active season, but there are also some that do point to an active season. We're definitely going to get into that because the chances of a more active season definitely have increased. We'll get into that towards the end of the video. If we take a look at the North Atlantic, it's just skyrocketed from where it was. Not too long ago, like around the end of May or so, like a few days ago, really, it was around average, and then it just shot up to 0.3 degrees Celsius above average. So, and it's been consistently where it was, but it kind of dropped and spiked again. Yeah, the North Atlantic definitely is above average, and sometimes, especially in the earlier part of the hurricane season, maybe even over the springtime and later on in the year, maybe around November, that's where some of those storms can move up, and then they maybe like instead of those subtropical storms technically form in that region. So it's a region with technically cooler water typically. So to see that above average is also a good sign for an more active hurricane season. Maybe not good, depending on how you look at it. The Caribbean, warmest it's been, at least ever since March. In terms of anomalies, 0.6 degrees Celsius above average. So the Caribbean is really heating up here. And that's a region that's already typically more conducive than other regions of the Atlantic Basin. So to see this one, the furthest above average so far, is definitely a telltale sign as well. It was below average for a little bit in April, but then it kind of came back there. You can see where it was above average in March. It's really above average now in May and now into June as well. So Caribbean, another place to watch out for, another place with warmer waters. And of course, the MDR region, which is the region, I'll show you in the sea surface temperature map in a bit where it is. It's a region off the coast of Africa where later on in the year, say in about 1.5 to 2 months or so, you'll start to see storms moving off of there and forming. It's a region where we're technically seeing the most development, aka the main development region. It got up to like 0.7 degrees above average briefly back in like late April, early May. Still hovering around a half a degree or 0.4 degrees Celsius above average though, which is again another telltale sign. And of course that was also below average in April, but again has come back quite a lot since then. All right, if we take a look at the Southern Oscillation Index, this is an index that is associated with the ENSO. It's a thing we can use to predict it, and you can see positive values of above 7 typically indicate a La Nina, while values below -7 typically indicate an El Nino. And look what happened after April. We really just kind of dropped off here. The bottom fell out. Right, so we're at a value of -19, which is again well below -7. So that's another factor that's pointing towards us having this El Nino. All right, and you can see where we've been above 7 for a while before. That's where we've been seeing that consistent La Nina for at least for the past 2 years, but I think it could even be slightly more than that. All right, if we take a look at the trade winds. During La Nina, there's a sustained strengthening of the trade winds across much of the tropical Pacific, while during El Nino, there is a sustained weakening or even a reversal of those trade winds. Now, I want to direct your attention here to the anomalies. You can see in the eastern tropical Pacific, we actually still do see some above average trade winds, right? Because that La Nina is still wearing off, into an ENSO neutral, and it's eventually over to an El Nino. It's a pretty fast change. But if you take a look here, most of the tropical Pacific, we're seeing anomalies of about average. Maybe again, some areas maybe slightly above, like 0.5 above in this kind of greenish color here. But in the more call it turquoise green, that's like your average. So about average in terms of the trade winds. So they haven't quite weakened yet, so to speak, but they are. You can see weaker, in these regions here. So we're eventually going to see that switch over to those weakening and maybe reversal of the trade winds as typically associated with an El Nino. So on the sea surface temperature map, here is like your MDR region. I'll highlight it for you right now. Pretty much around this area near the Cabo Verde Islands. All right, so this is where you're going to start to see activity later on in the year. I mean, you can see what I'm talking about now. Pretty much all of this area in the East Tropical Atlantic is like pretty far above average. I mean, nearly 2 degrees Celsius, in fact. Same thing with the Caribbean. Caribbean is really smoking there. And you can already start to see, the Nino 1-2 region is getting very warm, 4 or 5 degrees Celsius above average. You can see that warm water really spilling over here, and it's eventually going to encompass this region, or this region, typically what's noted, that's the Nino 3-4 region. That's what really determines our ENSO patterns. You can see the west coast of the U.S. and Mexico here, starting to see a little bit below average, or well below average in some cases, 1 to 2 degrees Celsius on those sea surface temperatures. The Gulf of Mexico, I wouldn't say it's as impressive as the Caribbean, although it was, and it's been cooling down a bit since. But that is because Tropical Storm Arlene has been sitting around in the eastern Gulf, kind of causing those cooler waters. And if you do want to see an update on Tropical Storm Arlene, I will have a link in the top right of the video. So be sure to check that out after this one. But you can see, yeah, but once the cool water, again, that's from Arlene, but once the storm passes and we give it a few days, the water should return to their, it's going to say weird to say it, but their normal, above normal status, because that's where they were before, barring any, cold fronts coming through, of course. The North Atlantic, again, you can see pretty warm as well. But once you get closer to like around the Gulf Stream area, it gets really, really frisky here. You can see like there's like some dark red of like 5 degrees Celsius above average, and it's a dark purple like 5 below. So yeah, it really gets conflicting in this region over here. But you can see off the coast of New England, even maybe some above average sea surface temperatures by as much as 3 degrees Celsius. That's another thing to point out. If we take a look at the trending here, in the past 7 days, how have sea surface temperatures trended? Well, they stayed about the same in the tropical Atlantic, cooled down a bit in some areas, warmed up a bit in others. The North Tropical Atlantic, again, like you saw in that previous graph here, if we take a look at the North Tropical Atlantic right here, you can see that spike. You can see here because it's been warming up in the past by about a degree and a half Celsius in the past 7 days. But the Gulf has cooled down a little bit, again, due to Arlene right in this region here. Western Gulf has actually warmed up a bit in the past week. The Nino 3-4 region is also warmed up. And we're seeing, of course, the Caribbean warm up a little bit over the past 7 days. The actual sea surface temperatures, what are they looking like? Well, some areas closing in on like 27, 28, even 29 Celsius in the Caribbean and the Gulf, exceeding 30 on the East Pac side, on the western side of like Mexico and even Central America. Right? And you can see this yellow line right here, that 25 degrees Celsius line. You'll start to see that lift up north as the season progresses. And of course, that's where we see those 25 Celsius is like 77-ish Fahrenheit. And that's those kind of temperatures where you can start to see some tropical storms developing if the other conditions line up. But 80 is that real magic number that they can get those tropical storms going and even form into hurricanes. It can really help when the waters are like above 80. And that's pretty much the case, Tropical Atlantic is approaching, if not exceeding 80. The Gulf and the Caribbean have definitely exceeded 80. And you're starting to see those 80-degree waters creep into the Gulf Stream, which of course goes up the East Coast, and that can enhance tropical activity there. So of course, something to keep our eyes on there as well. Let's move into some dry air maps. Our Saharan air layer, of course, the Saharan dust typically limits tropical activity. You can see that dust just, like I was saying in the Arlene video, kind of ate the storm alive. Really not much left of it because there's still a lot of dust, or a moderate amount in the Gulf of Mexico. The Caribbean, with the exception of the northwestern part, really not much to speak of. And there is, of course, a good chunk in the eastern tropical Pacific, but again, far below, I would say far below, but definitely below normal for what kind of dry air we can see. And that's causing some convection, of course, to still make its way off the coast of Africa. And one thing to note too, there are apparently reports that the Western African monsoon season could actually be above normal this year, so that could actually help to increase the convection that's coming off the coast of Africa, and of course, and only enhance our season even more. So I think that's another thing that NOAA took into account with their new outlook. You can see a lot of convection, a lot of thunderstorm activity, nothing tropical out here. In the northwestern part of the Atlantic here. All right, we take a look. Here's another like water vapor. You can kind of see that dry air more prevalently here. You can really see it forming across, or spreading across the Gulf of Mexico and the Western Caribbean. And again, there's a little bit out here in the tropical Atlantic and the Eastern Caribbean. And of course, you can see like this is Arlene. It's apparently still a tropical storm, but I'm pretty sure it's like remnants by now. But yeah, it's pretty much nothing left of it to speak of. Maybe some wind at most, some lower pressure maybe. You can see some convection out here in that spot I just mentioned earlier. But yeah, other than that, really not much to speak of right now. But again, it's very early. And again, there are the signs that are pointed towards a more active season that we're going to continue to explore here as we have been. You can see the convective I'm sorry, the cyclonic vorticity signature here. You can really see that's where Arlene is here. Other than that, there are some areas of enhanced vorticity signatures, but other than that, not much to speak of currently, which is again a good sign if you don't like the active hurricane seasons. And yes, I did also just look at Arlene is officially a tropical depression now, which I makes sense. It'll probably become remnants pretty soon because it was not supposed to last too long in the marginally favorable at best environment that it had. But yeah, again, not much to speak of, at least currently. Again, we're also going to be looking into the future here. One sign here, one thing I've noticed, it does typically go up and down, right? Because this is measuring, this is taking the average of the shear in the entire Caribbean basin. So, of course, this is going to go up and down a little bit. But one thing here, sign if you don't like the more active hurricane seasons. Then again, I did just look at tropical storm Arlene has been downgraded to a depression and will probably become remnant soon, which I expected because it was not going to last in the very, marginally favorable at best conditions that it was enduring there in the Eastern Gulf. We take a look here at the shear in the Caribbean. Again, this is taking the reading of the average shear like in the entire Caribbean basin. So, of course, expect these values to go up and down, up and down. But even still, we've seen a significant drop off here, since even you can see between April and May, for the most part, we've been staying between 18 to 33 knots of shear. And we'll see how long this lasts, but for right now, shear is pretty much dropped off here. You can see, and the black line is like the average amount, the average of the Caribbean basin here for the shear. You can see that average line is usually around this time of year of around 19 or 20-ish knots. Right now, it's down to about 9. So again, there have been spikes and drops. So we'll see how long this lasts, but for right now, shear is below average in the Caribbean. That's something to point out, and out in the tropical Atlantic, in the eastern tropical Atlantic as well. Again, there have been many spikes, so it'll probably go back up. But for right now, that's also below average, sitting at about 10 or 11 knots. And normally, it's around this time of year, it's about 16 or so. Again, you can see it typically does get at its lowest, of course, between later July and later September, which is, of course, in line with the more active parts of the year, which does make a lot of sense. We take a look at the current shear in the Gulf of Mexico here. There's like a map from the Weather Channel here so you can see more detail. Yeah, there's some pretty high shear values. Of course, where Arlene is, it's a depression at this point, not a storm. But Caribbean, in the northern and central parts, there are some weaker amounts of shear, very low shear, but in general, the East Coast and the Gulf of Mexico are being protected by higher amounts of shear right now. Those are like your bodyguards, to protect against the tropical systems. You can see another map here of that, and you can see, again, Central Caribbean is where we don't have a lot of shear right now. You can see where the red is. It's kind of like, I kind of think of this as like a traffic light, where green is like, go, you're good. Yellow is like, it's all right. Maybe, be prepared to stop. And it's like, obviously, how the yellow and the traffic light works. It's like, and then red is like, unfavorable wind shear conditions, probably won't survive if you go through this red zone. So that's why I kind of like this map. It's kind of like color-coded like a traffic light, if you will. But yeah, of course, still a lot of shear out in the Atlantic to be had, which again is going to be the norm here for an El Nino season. But there could be times, of course, where we see those values go down, and of course, when we'll see an uptick in tropical activity. You can see another representation of that right here. So if we take a look here at the oceanic heat content, I believe I did display this in my Tropical Storm Arlene video as well. But you can see it's like we got values now of 100 to 150. I don't think they were this high on my fourth discussion of the hurricane season that I did a little while ago. But yeah, values are getting really high here. And again, this is measuring what those oceanic heat, those sea surface temperatures are like below, not just on the surface, but of course in the subsurface, which really have these tropical systems that can help them tap into that energy. So that's really something we're going to be watching out for. The Gulf of Mexico has some, but not much. It's really the Caribbean that has it all right now, but it will eventually spread into the Gulf and will be spreading its way north, as you can see. Got a little bit of heat starting to spread now into the tropical Atlantic as well. So again, give it time, give it a couple months, this will eventually start spreading to the north, as you'll see throughout the hurricane season. This is the tropical intensity or favorability index. This kind of shows, are conditions favorable if the storm were to move through this region. The Caribbean, according to this map, is pretty highly favorable. Again, mainly because that central part of the Caribbean right here has a lower amount of shear, very warm waters, not that much dry air combined to make this map here. But other than that, the Gulf, the East Coast, really nothing here, highly unfavorable. I know it's kind of flipped from what we just talked about with the traffic light, because now red means good and green means bad. But yeah, you can definitely see the key there at the bottom of your screen. So yeah, some favorable conditions there in the Caribbean, something to keep a note of as well. We take a look here at the CHI. This is kind of like basically it's a simple way to explain this map is showing green is basically increased amounts of convection and thunderstorm activity, and like those orange, reddish brown colors is like the lower amounts of tropical activity or lower amounts of convection at least. This doesn't always guarantee tropical activity. It's talking about convection, but of course one of the things that that's how the storm forms from the convection and from the moisture. So you can see around the Gulf and the Caribbean, this is going through June 7th, June 12th. We got June 17th here. It looks like increased convection, at least for the next couple of weeks. It could even last to the end of June, maybe out in the tropical Atlantic by late June, early July. Maybe we'll see some early activity form out there. But yeah, that's something to keep an eye on here. This is based on the EWP zonal harmonics here. So you see this pretty much goes out through June 2nd through July 12th. So you can see that map right here. All right, we take a look at the wind shear anomalies. Pretty far below average. Look at June 2nd to June 9th out in the tropical Atlantic. Wind shear is as much as 20 to 30 degrees below average. It turns out, 20 to 30 knots below average. It looks like a temperature map, I know. And you can see wind shear is as much as 30, 40 knots above average there on the north side of the tropical Atlantic. And you can see about 10, 20 knots above average in the Gulf of Mexico. But as we play, this is a CFS model, by the way. As we go through time, this could be because we get more uncertain, so they kind of eliminate the stronger, the deeper colors. But you can see things will like average out in time. But I'm sure once we get to this point, the map will look a lot different. But yeah, definitely mellowing out. But still, some below average wind shear, near the coast of Africa. So again, these things are what we're going to be looking at and keep an eye on as we head throughout the hurricane season. And here's another version of this map that we just showed, just on the CFS model. And it's weird. I tried it on multiple devices. For some reason, the map is just blocked off. But I'm able to read the dates, so I will be sure to give you guys the dates. It's pretty much like this in every video for some reason. The map's just cut off. So this is June 2nd to June 9th here. And you can see a lot of convection, or a lot far above average convection coming off the coast of Africa. And you can see as we move in time, everything kind of moves from left to right, as I pointed out a lot. So this will eventually move over here, and then this will eventually move over here, and so on and so forth. All right, so maybe some decreased convection. Now this is the 9th to the 16th of June. You can see some decreased convection maybe in the Gulf and the Caribbean. Maybe we'll see increase, maybe in the Pacific as well. This is the 16th to the 23rd. It's pretty much 1 week increments. All right, so as you can guess, next here is the 23rd to the 30th. Some slightly above average convection, as you can see here. And then the 30th to July 7th, maybe some below average convection. But again, we're getting pretty far out in time here at this point. And then everything again, pretty much holds the same here. This is July 7th to July 14th. All right, so now the moment we've all been waiting for, my 5th updated 2023 hurricane season forecast. We've actually added a couple more sources on here as well. So we're going to make sure to go through everything once again. And I've actually had to add two tables to two of them here because just got too much to fit on the one at this point. So here we go. The average, again, the 1991 to 2020 average, not the 1981 to 2010 average that I grew up on. But yes, the new 1991 to 2020 average of storms is 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. All right. So the 2022 season, we had 14 named storms, 8 hurricanes, 2 major hurricanes. So again, pretty much right about average. 1 more hurricane than normal, 1 less major hurricane than normal. Pretty much averaged out here. For AccuWeather, they are predicting 11 to 15 named storms, 4 to 8 hurricanes, and 1 to 3 major hurricanes. So again, about normal for them as well. Now, NOAA, this is a new addition here, and this is what they came out with, their latest update here. 12 to 17 named storms, 5 to 9 hurricanes, and 1 to 4 major hurricanes. So now, again, that could mean average. The lower end of this could be below average, and the higher end is above average. But they do have that possibility of an above average season here. So still a pretty wide range in their numbers. The weather company, again, 15 named storms, 7 hurricanes, 3 major hurricanes. Same with the Colorado State University. North Carolina State University, this is a new addition that I did into this video. 11 to 15 named storms, 6 to 8 hurricanes, and 2 to 3 major hurricanes. So, even though not a lot of named storms form, a good chunk of them become hurricanes, at least according to their prediction. And my forecast has gone up slightly, of course, due to the new forecast and the new maps. 13 to 15 named storms, 5 to 8 hurricanes, 1 to 3 major hurricanes. So definitely, but even if it was a below average season, guys, you definitely know that always be prepared for hurricane season because it only takes one to cause a lot of damage potentially to where you are. So of course, definitely be prepared so that does not happen, or at least minimize the impacts. But yeah, looking like an average, maybe slightly below, maybe slightly above, but looking around an average to slightly above average season, possibly in the books here. So thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more updates. I am the Weather Dude signing off. Till next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video.